All right, let's just dive right in. If you're a parent, you know. You know that nightly struggle. It's one of the toughest parts of the job. You're exhausted, your child's exhausted, and yet sleep feels like it's miles away. Well, this explainer is for you. We're going to break down the actual evidence-based strategies to help everyone in your house finally get the rest they so desperately need.
And let's just start by saying how incredibly hard this is. This quote from Dr. Jacqueline Nesi, it just hits home for so many parents. I mean, if you've ever found yourself bargaining, pleading, or even sleeping on your kid's floor, you are so not alone. But here's the good news. It really doesn't have to be this way.
So to actually fix the problem, we've got to understand what's really going on. And it all boils down to this powerful psychological idea that you might be using without even realizing it. The source material calls it the accidental slot machine. Let's get into exactly what that means.
Come on, we've all been them. Your child is begging, just one more story, one more drink of water, one more hug. And it just feels so much easier to give in. But have you ever noticed that the more you give in, the more they ask for the next night? Well, there is a very real scientific reason for that.
The concept behind all of this is called operant conditioning. Now, that sounds super academic, but the idea is actually incredibly simple. If a behavior gets a reward, that behavior is way more likely to happen again. Like a lab rat pressing a lever to get a little food pellet. It's the same basic principle, just with more crime.
But here is the big twist, the real aha moment. What creates the absolute strongest, most persistent, hardest to break behavior? It's not getting a reward every single time. It's an unpredictable reward. Think about it. That's exactly how a slot machine works. The not knowing if you're going to win is precisely what keeps you pulling the lever. So when you sometimes give in to one more story, you've accidentally turned bedtime into a game of chance. You've become a human slot machine.
And what's the jackpot in this little bedtime casino? It's your attention. And this is so important to get. It does not have to be positive attention. Negotiating, begging, even raising your voice, it all counts. Because any kind of attention is a reward that also gets them the ultimate prize, putting off bedtime.
So how do we shut down this accidental slot machine? You have to flip the script entirely. You have to consistently, and I mean consistently, ignore the behaviors you want to stop. The stalling, the requests, all of it. And at the same time, you actively reward the behaviors you do want to see, like them staying in bed quietly. The only way this works is with absolute, unwavering consistency.
Okay, so you're fired up, you're ready to be consistent, I love it. But I have to give you a really important heads up. When you first start, things are probably not going to go smoothly. You have to be ready for something called the extinction burst.
Just think about that slot machine again. When it stops paying out, you don't just walk away, do you? No, you pull the lever again, maybe faster, maybe harder. Your child will do the exact same thing. When their usual tactics suddenly stop working, they won't just give up, they will double down. The protests will get louder, they'll last longer, they'll be way more intense. That is the extinction burst.
And this moment, the peak of that extinction burst, this is when most parents crack. It feels like what you're doing is making things worse, not better. But the truth is, it's a sign that it is working. It means the old behavior is in its death throes. So, knowing this is coming, that's your secret weapon. It lets you brace for impact and just push through it without giving in.
Okay, so now we get the psychology behind it all, and we're ready for that inevitable pushback. So now, let's build our practical, hands-on playbook with strategies you can literally start using tonight to make bedtime better. The evidence really points to two core strategies that make the biggest impact. First, building a totally solid, predictable routine, and second, mastering the clock to get their body's internal schedule working for you, not against you. Let's break down each one.
A great bedtime routine really doesn't need to be this long, complicated affair. In fact, research shows there are just 4 key ingredients. First, keep it short, like under 30 minutes. Second, make sure it's relaxing, just 2 or 3 calm activities like reading a book. Third, and you've heard this before, it has to be consistent. Same time, same order, every single night. And finally, and this is a big one, keep it screen-free, especially in the bedroom. That's it. That's the whole recipe.
So what do you do if your kid's internal clock is just set way too late?
You can't just force an 8 p.m. bedtime if their body is screaming that it's 10 p.m. That's where this technique called bedtime fading is just brilliant. You start by putting them to bed at their actual fall asleep time. Let's say it's 9 p.m. Once you have a couple of easy, successful nights, you just move bedtime 15 minutes earlier. A few nights later, another 15 minutes. You gently fade the bedtime to where you want it to be, working with their body clock.
All right, now for the last piece of the puzzle. And honestly, it's probably the most important one. How do you actually teach your child to fall asleep all by themselves, without you in the room? Let's get into the game-winning moves.
I absolutely love how the source material puts this. Your ultimate goal here is to make yourself completely useless at bedtime. You don't want to be the human pacifier, you don't want to be the back scratcher, you don't want to be the person they rely on to sleep. They need to learn that they have the skill to do it all on their own.
So how do you actually make yourself useless? Well, the research points to two main paths, and you've probably heard of both of them. The first is the direct approach, often called cry it out, and the second is a more gradual method, sometimes called the slow fade.
So let's just lay them out side by side. With cry it out, the approach is pretty straightforward. You put your child to bed awake, and then you ignore all protests until they fall asleep. It's usually very fast, often works in less than a week, but man, it can be really tough on parents. The slow fade is the more gradual option. You do check-ins with short, boring reassurances, but at longer and longer intervals. This one takes more time, but it can definitely feel more manageable for some families.
Okay, but we have to talk about the elephant in the room. The biggest fear for most parents is, will letting my child cry cause them harm? The research on this could not be more clear or reassuring. There is absolutely zero evidence that these methods cause any long-term psychological damage. In fact, it's the opposite. The result isn't a harmed child, it's a child who is getting more of the sleep that is so essential for their health and development.
But maybe your problem is that you literally have to lie down with your child until they fall asleep. Don't worry, there's a strategy for that too. It's called fading of parental presence. You start wherever you normally are, maybe sitting on their bed. After a few nights, you move to a chair right next to the bed. Then, a few nights later, that chair moves to the doorway. You just gradually fade your presence right out of the room until, boom, they're falling asleep on their own.
And here is the ultimate payoff. This is the big one. Fixing the bedtime battle often fixes the middle of the night problem for free. And why is that? Because once a kid learns the skill of falling asleep by themselves at bedtime, they can use that exact same skill when they naturally wake up at 2 a.m. And the result? Those night wakings often just vanish within a couple of weeks.
Okay, let's put it all together in a super simple, quick reference guide. If your kid fights the routine, your strategy is rock-solid consistency. If they stay up way too late, your go-to tool is bedtime fading. And if they need you in the room to fall asleep, your plan is to choose one of the extinction methods that feels right for your family. Look, I really want to end by saying this again. This stuff is hard. It's not easy. These strategies take real commitment and, yeah, nerves of steel, especially when you're in that extinction burst. But they are based on decades of solid research, and they really truly work. The payoff isn't just a quiet evening for you, it's a well-rested child and a well-rested you. So, the final thought I want to leave you with is this. The struggle, the tears, that really tough extinction burst, it's all temporary. But the skill of independent sleep, that lasts a lifetime. A few hard nights can lead to years of peaceful ones. So the real question isn't whether or not you can do this. The real question is, what are you going to do with all that extra sleep?